But first now to our public broadcaster. Now, we've seen sickening displays of anti-Semitism in Australia, on campuses, in companies and on the streets. It's a major story unfolding in our country right now, at crisis point. Yet the ABC has failed to cover it in any meaningful way. Instead, the public broadcaster is happy to delve into the subject of Islamophobia and provide a platform to people like Anthony Lowenstein, who has called for a one-state solution.
Seeing what has happened to Gaza since October 7 has been heartbreaking. I'm so ashamed. I'm so ashamed because it's being done in my name. And I think it's important that Jews or non-Jews are really challenged on what they're backing.
The ABC also produced a Four Corners piece on the war led by John Lyons, who's been very critical of Israel, including claiming that Australia's support of Israel is illogical and unhealthy.
If you were a Palestinian living in the West Bank or Gaza, what would your view be of Israel?
I would fight against Israel in order to achieve my liberty.
How would you fight? How dirty?
I would do everything in order to achieve my liberty, and that's it.
So where's the ABC's documentary on anti-Semitism that's risen by over 700% since October the 7th, as Peter Dutton just spoke about tonight? It's shameful that the public broadcaster hasn't examined this topic, and it's left to us at Sky News and former Treasurer Josh Frydenberg to produce the only substantial documentary on this subject to date. Now, I put questions to the ABC on this. I asked them that separate from Islamophobia and separate from whether anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are indistinguishable, because they have covered that, has the ABC covered the story of the explosion in anti-Semitism in Australia this year on any of their flagship programs? Now, they just directed me to the search results page on the ABC's news website, which showed nothing of substance. Now, the former ABC director, Joe Gersh, is calling this out, and he joins me now. Joe, what do you think of the ABC failing to properly examine this crisis that we're seeing in Australia?
Well, good evening, Shari. As you know, I'm a supporter of the ABC, or at least the supporter of a strong, independent and impartial ABC as a critical part of our national conversation. I was a director for a period of 5 years. I saw the promotion that you had last week of Josh Frydenberg's documentary and the commentary that you've made at that time and subsequently. And I observed independently of you and put on social media my concern, which is, why has it fallen to Sky News and Josh? That's not a criticism of Sky News or Josh, but it is a matter of deep concern to me as a member of the Jewish community, as a former ABC director, and as an Australian citizen, that our national broadcaster has not fully understood and dealt with what I believe has reached crisis proportion, which is anti-Semitism in this country. But Shari, can I just say that I think that even since you announced Josh's documentary and called this to light, I think we've reached an inflection point in the public conversation about anti-Semitism. The Prime Minister said this week that this is the worst that he's seen in his lifetime. We had the Leader of the Opposition's speech tonight, which you referred to earlier. You had the Senate today pass a motion, a bipartisan motion, which said that from the river to the sea, which is the mantra of the Hamas supporters and many of the Palestinian supporters, is offensive, is anti-Semitic and is out of place. We've had vice-chancellors, some, come out and say what's going on campus is outrageous and unacceptable. So the conversation is moving and moving quickly, but I find it deeply disappointing that the ABC didn't lead this conversation and hasn't really joined in on it.
Now, Joe, we've spoken and done interviews a lot of times in the past, and you know, you were often on the other side defending the ABC from accusations of bias. And I think the issue is, if you look at any one piece of ABC content that, you know, people complain about, it can be defended. You can say, oh, well, there was balance in any one piece of content. We gave a voice to this one and we gave a voice to this one. But I think the issue is the overall subjects that they're covering and what they're not covering. So what we're seeing here is that they're not covering this crisis. I mean, do you think it's a case? I mean, you've been there, Joe. You've been in the room. You've sat at the board table. You've pushed back on some of these issues. Do you think it's a case of the people who work at the ABC not caring about the Jewish community? Do you think they are more pro-Palestinian? Is that what it is?
Well, yes, I've been in the room as a director, although, as you know, the directors of the ABC don't run editorial content. I've also been in the room, my hotel room in Tel Aviv, when 300 cruise missiles, drones and other projectiles were flung at Israel, thankfully unsuccessfully. I visited down south and saw what Hamas got up to. So I've been not only in the room at the ABC, but in the room dealing with the issue on the ground. And with some regret and some trepidation, I would say this, that one of the reasons the ABC is not part of the solution here is that it's part of the problem. That for the reason that you've identified, you identified John Lyons in your introduction. He's an experienced journalist and he's knowledgeable on the subject, but he's written a book which makes it very clear where he stands on the question of Israel. But then a monograph in which he roundly attacked the Jewish communities, organisations and advocacy groups for standing up and defending Israel. Now, he has a right to his views, obviously, but how can he be the lead spokesman on global affairs at the ABC dealing with this issue with that particular position? You've mentioned the Lowenstein program. He is a stock standard anti-Israel spokesman. The fact that he has Jewish parentage is a curiosity, but not to the point. Now, Compass is the leading religious affairs program, and yet it deals with this fringe issue and fringe person, frankly, instead of asking this question: why is it that for the first time in living memory, Jews in Australia who have been part of the fabric of this society are saying to themselves, is Jewish life viable in the medium to long term in Australia? And that is a very serious consideration. But as I say, even in the weeks since you've promoted that that documentary, which I'm very much looking forward to seeing,
as am I.
I think the conversation has changed.
Yeah.
I think that conversation has. I think that conversation is changing, and it's not before time.
No,
but there's
indeed.
a lot more work to be done. But it begins, Shari, with one thing, which is recognising, acknowledging, and addressing the problem. And I would like to see the ABC front and centre in that endeavour.
And unfortunately, they surely won't be. Joe Gersh, thank you very much for coming on air, for speaking out on Sky News, not on the public broadcaster where you were a director. Thank you so much for your time.